This program contains dramatic reenactments and material that may be disturbing to some audience members. Viewer discretion is advised.
BTK certainly suffered from malignant narcissism. And that's when you begin to consider yourself superior to others, that you're incapable of making mistakes, and you have a desperate need for attention. He's a psychopath. And a psychopath is a very manipulative individual. He's an individual who manages to compartmentalize. In other words, he can separate out what's taking place from his involvement. He had what he called a hit kit. He brought his own materials.
BTK targeted neighborhoods where he thought he might find women at home alone. 25-year-old Nancy Fox was one such woman. She worked 2 jobs and arrived home late every night.
We know that he was out there selecting victims in preparation for future attacks.
But then, in the 1980s, silence. BTK seemed to have disappeared. No more letters, no more murders. Had he given up? Or was he stalking his next victim?
We were told all along, serial killers can't stop. You know, we didn't believe that. We believe he did stop. We believe he was here.
In 2004, 30 years after he had first struck, advances in DNA technology provided a breakthrough. The semen samples from murders BTK carried out in the 1970s were reanalyzed. Police now had a DNA profile of the killer. Then, on the 30th anniversary of BTK's first attack, attorney Robert Beatty published a book saying that BTK had stopped killing.
I thought, this guy is probably dead. It started as an academic educational exercise. But there was a point when I realized that this might actually flesh out the killer.
March 19, 2004, a letter arrived here claiming credit for a brutal, unsolved murder in 1986. The victim, 28-year-old Vicki Wegerle. The signature was all too familiar. The residents of Wichita felt the fear of 30 years ago grip the city again. The hunt was on for BTK. BTK responded to Lieutenant Landwehr's appeals, leaving a series of notes and packages, often inside cereal boxes, marked BTK. BTK played a game of cat and mouse with the police for 10 months, but his urge to communicate led to a critical mistake. He left a package in the back of a pickup in a parking lot. The lot was covered by security cameras. Detectives prepared to analyze more than 2,000 hours of footage in a race against time.
A vehicle comes into the lot. It does kind of a loop, and it pulls next to the truck. He pulls something out from his vehicle and places it behind the cab of the truck, and then gets back in his vehicle and pulls away.
The pictures couldn't identify BTK, but could they pinpoint his vehicle? BTK drove a black Jeep Cherokee. In the package left at the hardware store, the killer asked if a computer floppy disk can be traced back to the computer which authored it. If police promised it couldn't, he'd send future messages that way.
I don't think anyone could ever believe that we were that lucky.
The police told BTK that his floppy disk couldn't be traced. In believing them, BTK had made a fatal error. Detectives rushed to Dennis Rader's house. They still had to check out one vital detail.
As we came down the street here, we saw that there was a black Jeep Cherokee in the driveway. And it was just a huge rush of energy, because the thing about the Cherokee was it was the one piece of evidence that he didn't know we had.
Even with the Jeep and the computer disk, the evidence was circumstantial. Lieutenant Landwehr ordered detectives to hold back.
As lieutenant, I bring them all back. I say, no. I wanted to be sure, and I wanted to get some DNA.
Police needed to link Dennis Rader's DNA with that of the killer. By accessing medical records, they obtained the DNA profile of Rader's daughter.
They wanted to establish if BTK was in fact the father of this individual. It's fair to say that you could exclude over 99% of the population with these paternity tests.
And Rader's daughter proved BTK and Dennis Rader were the same man. Shortly after 12 noon on February 25, 2005, Dennis Rader headed home for lunch.
Dennis Rader, you're under arrest.
Rader escaped execution only because his murders were committed before Kansas voted to restore the death penalty. His sentence was the toughest the judge could impose: 10 life sentences, totaling 175 years. He will never be released.